supreme assembly, by my merit of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So we've been discussing what states of mind help us with being open to the joy that is present every day. What qualities of mind keep us open to that? And so we've discussed perspective, being able to step back and see whatever's happening from a less, enmeshed view, where we're able to actually step back and, look at it from different angles. And looking at it with humility, how we can, understand our limitations, understand that there are others that may know more than us, understanding that we can't control everything, being able to step back and have a mind that stays open, doesn't feel like it already knows everything, so that it can learn from every situation. And then humor, being able to chuckle at ourselves, our expectations, our, what is it, the insanity definition, doing the same thing again and again, expecting a different result, so we can chuckle with ourselves and we watch our habit energy, keep pushing us in the same direction and going, oh, there I go again, like it's going to work this time, And then acceptance, that we're understanding, these are not necessarily in order, but acceptance is also sort of necessary. Hey, Faye. This, that we, as long as we're, not even willing to accept what is, we can't work with it. There's nothing to work with. We're still caught up in, how can it be this way? Or why can't it change? Or it shouldn't have never gotten like this, or whatever, the mental ineffective strategy we use in our thoughts, because we certainly can't, change conditions if we won't even accept the condition that is existing. So, so although it's difficult, and it's difficult because some of the things we talked about last week, we talked about how acceptance, we might be, including in acceptance this idea that it means you agree, that, it's like tacit agreement with the situation, and that's not the case. In this context, we're just merely talking about being able to recognize what's happening, accepting that's what is, and then responding in whatever way we think might be helpful to ourselves and others, as opposed to getting trapped in resistance to what is. And then we can't do anything because we're not focused on doing anything. We're just focused on how it shouldn't be like this. And that just increases our suffering. Because as long as we're stuck in that feeling of it shouldn't be like this, or why is it like this, or whatever, we are, stirring things up as if we can go change the past so that this hasn't arrived, this moment. Acceptance is also not saying you won't do anything to try to change the conditions. So we're talking, when we talk about acceptance in this context, we're just talking about merely accepting what's going on, knowing it, acknowledging it, because that's going to be the jumping off spot for the choices we have about how to respond to it. A particularly striking example of this attitude that was shared in the Book of Joy, is from Edith Eva Eger when she was in a concentration camp. She described it as a life that was an endless selection line where one never knew whether one would live or die. The only thing that kept a person alive was the acceptance of the reality of one's existence. Curiosity about what would happen next, even when she was left for dead in a pile of bodies, was often all she had to pull herself forward to the next breath. So let's hope none of us have to experience that extreme of finding the mind of acceptance. But it's this, okay, so this is what is, and I'm still alive. So what do I choose to do next? It's like, if you were in a plane crash or something, and you're the only survivor, and if you're able, getting up and walking away, it's just like, we can either stay trapped in a mind of disbelief, or we can move forward. And, the time span of that happening is going to vary depending on our own mind training and also on the circumstances. So one of the things that we can also work with acceptance is how we react in that initial moment. What is our habit energy that arises, whether it's fear or rage or hurt or sadness? Being accepting towards ourselves for whatever arises. And not judging ourselves, just recognizing, I'm enraged. And not trying to suppress that or run away from it. Understanding that it's impermanent. Doesn't feel like that when it's happening, does it? It's really shocking how, when some strong state of mind arises, how we just think it's going to be forever. And so that's why it's useful to reflect from time to time in meditation about things that have happened in the past that really, stirred a very strong response, and that now doesn't exist. To really remind us of the impermanence of everything. The way we think, the emotions we feel caught in, the situation. I'm sure people during World War II never thought it would end. So it's just we need to be reminded that things end. The good stuff ends. The bad stuff ends. Learning how to effectively respond can help determine how deep the scars and wounds are. Being able to be open to what this moment might hold for us in terms of opportunity. Because many of the things that we find hard to accept are not big. So we can practice with those. I really can't see many of your faces this morning. You're either in shadow or you're not there. So I have no clue. Not that I can tell what you're thinking anyway, but So has anybody thought about acceptance this week? What arose for you?
I've thought about it, but I don't always react the way I would like to. And the last thing I think about is that this is going, about impermanence. And I've just got to keep practicing.
Katrina?
I think about it all the time. And it's very helpful because it's calming me down. And you were just talking about keeping the mind open. I just remind myself, open-mindedness. It's like a mantra. What I like, I really like that you added, what would be a more positive response in this situation? What would add to this instead of subtracting? What would be positive instead of negative? Okay, I'm going to work on that all week. It's helping a lot. Thank you so much.
Jessica?
Yeah, I liked when you said, what are your thoughts when you're having the, are you planning, or are you, how did you put that?
If you're problem solving.
Yeah. Could you expand on that a little bit? I thought that was really interesting to realize that.
So one thing that we can observe, because we tend to try to escape from any kind of heavy discomfort, whether it's sadness or fear or anger, and so we'll start thinking about it, and so so one of the things we can start observing, being more aware of, is what are our habits? Do we have a pattern of immediately going into problem solving? That might be an effective habit. You know, or do we go into a mind that's thinking about how did this happen? And, you know, but not seriously looking at how did this happen, more of just, this shouldn't have happened, you know, the resistance kind of mind, or the if only mind, or what if mind, all those things. So we want to see if that's our habit. You know, we want to see if our habit is resignation. Oh, well, I'm stuck with this. It's going to last forever, you know. So we want to see, because if we don't know what we do, if we don't know how our mind goes, we can't discern whether we're being skillful or not, you know? So we can kind of uncover the different, you know, because, you know, many things do need problem solving. Does that help?
Yeah, so would it be skillful to try to keep, like if you keep problem solving, it seems like that gets a little bit, you know, like on a wheel too. You know, I do that a lot.
You have to be able to discern problem solving versus worrying. Or trying to find the perfect answer.
Right.
Anybody suffer from that? You don't choose doing anything because you're not sure it's the right thing to do. So you get stuck in sort of doubt. You know, I don't know if I'm right. I don't know. You know, we get hooked in all that. You know, also, we want to make sure we have allowed ourselves, some things we can just problem solve right away, but other, you know, but many things in life, we need to step back and let perspective in. We need to see if it's really something we need to fix. You know, it's just, you know, it's allowing more spaciousness, because the mind is an incredible tool, you know, so we want to allow it as much spaciousness for, you know, wisdom to arise. You know, it's so we really kind of have to see what's going on. And that's part of why learning how to stay with the uncomfortable states of mind when they arise, that because those can give us some insight into how we might want to approach our response, you know.
Hey, Venerable Tendron.
Yes.
Hi. Nice to see you all.
Good to see you.
Again. I had a question. You were talking resignation. I definitely feel that, especially towards someone in my family who, you know, loves to control things, and I just have to resign and say and let that person, the only way that she can be happy. So I mean, I've tried to do ways of thinking, okay, if that person was gonna die in a week, I would just try to be happy, but it comes back again. I feel resentful, like I just have to let that person take control, because that's the only way she feels happy. And I don't know, like, it feels like I have to let what I want be put aside. I mean, how is that?
It's challenging, isn't it? When it's someone who has had the responsibility to be in control for most of your life. Our parents have that job.
Right.
You know, and then we say, you know, enough of that. I'm grown up now. You don't have to, you know, try to control everything. Oh, that's going to be effective, right? You know, but I mean, so it really is this part of working with our mind over, you know, how can we flow with this, you know,
yeah,
in this new aspect, you know, we're grown up, you know, all this kind of stuff. So we have to, but mostly from a Buddhist perspective, what we certainly want to work on is letting go of, you know, anger or resentment or, you know, a total, you know.
how?
Well, I mean, it just takes time. It's sort of like recognizing that resentment's arisen and then, you know, going, okay, how important is this resentment? You know?
Not important.
You know, and so it's a matter of you know, like I don't know if y'all, and my mom used to say, well, no, not my mom. My stepmom used to say, you know, you need to choose your battles, you know, in a relationship. You know, it's like you don't, you know, not everything has to change to suit you. You have to also be one to give, you know, to accept how someone else feels. You know, I had this, my father had this belief that girls had to be very careful not to physically harm themselves in some way that leaves scars or maiming. So, because he said you'll never find a partner, you know, you can't, you know, so you can't use power tools. And yesterday, I was just realizing, oh, all those times he took knives out of my hands to cut my fruit or cut a watermelon or whatever was the same thing that, you know, prevented him from letting me use power tools growing up. So sometimes it's a matter of really understanding what their fear is, you know, and it's like, sometimes you can't do anything about it. You know, like fears are irrational.
Mm.
You know, so it's sort of like we have to just, now sometimes we have to, you know, because, you know, we have the right to live our lives too, you know, but it's just sort of like we can't take care of their fear if it's irrational and it's something, you know, so you have to be able to weigh these things. But if we can do it if there's love present in their actions, that can give us something to support us in just trying to work it out, as opposed to just demanding that they change. You know, so it's a you know, really keeping that heart open and that perspective, standing back and imagining what it would be like if you were the parent, or if you were so afraid of life that you felt the need to control everything. If you really believed that control equals nothing wrong, nothing going wrong, you know, which is not true, because we can't actually do it. But, you know, that's all, you know, that's an individual learning, not one that we can force onto someone else.
Right.
You know.
Okay. Thank you.
And so sometimes it's just, you know, for me, I know that I find that just if I accept that I want the relationship, then I accept that it's going to be flawed. That the only place a perfect relationship is going to exist is in my imagination. And holding on to that causes problems. I suffer more when I hold on to my idea of how others should be. So again, it's this acceptance of where people are, where we are. And we can choose to walk away. We can choose to try to negotiate. We can choose to try to explain. You can have heart-to-hearts, you know. Acceptance does not mean we don't have to do anything differently or don't want to do anything differently. Acceptance just means you're aware of what's happening now and what's happened in the past as best as you're able. And from our own perspective. It's not like acceptance says, I know the truth. Sort of, you know the truth from your perspective. So I was reading today about how, you know, we're made up of the same stuff as the stuff of the Big Bang. And it was this comment that if we were to take a proton at the time of the Big Bang, and we were holding a watch, and we followed that until, you know, to this moment now, this proton, no time would have passed. Anybody get their head around that? So things are not the way they appear to be. Just, it's like, and I can't even get my mind to even consider things like that. I can't, it's like gives me a headache just trying to think about it. But
was there an explanation?
I'm sorry?
Was there an explanation?
No, I think it's much more, it's about the speed of light and stuff and bending time and space. So I'm sure there is an explanation. I'm sure I also won't understand it in this life. I don't have the time to understand it. So, but it's just the point is that we have this very limited perspective. And so one thing that can help us with acceptance is really, especially in light of cause and effect, if you're considering the world from the point of view of cause and effect, it's quite clear we can't know all the causes and conditions for every event that arises. We don't have enough view. And that's part of what we have to accept is our limited view. And even if we understand how all the pieces of the puzzle connected and it ended up here, that doesn't mean we can change ending up here. We are here. So we can do our part in creating the cause for a different result in the future. And we can even, according to the Buddha, get out of this uncontrolled existence. But we cannot make that happen for everyone. It's because it is about transforming the mind to be able to be open to all there is to know. So that appearances no longer fool us. And we actually can experience things as they are. So then we can answer that proton question thing, because we'll just know how that is.
Bobby has a question, Venerable.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. So years ago, I was in a different type of meeting, and I heard the speaker said, it was, how's your week going was the question. He said, oh, it's going terribly. Nobody's saying what I want them to say or acting the way I want them to act or the way they want. And I was like floored for the first 30 seconds. I thought he was being serious. So over the years, I've sort of gotten it. And I have people that I consider challenging in my life. So I go with the acceptance and the compassion and knowing that, somebody's will say one, he's always right. So rather than challenging, I accept maybe, I just make a few guesses. He has some ego issues or he needs to be right. So I'm comfortable and I'm okay with that. But where I get stuck is in the back of my head, I'm going, okay, here we go again. So I'm wondering, am I being judgmental?
Do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's 50-50 sometimes because I'm not sure if it's judgmental, but I need to make that, I don't know if it's judgmental or discernment that I know this person reacts or speaks that way, or maybe they're a little angry. So rather than saying I'm not going to bother with this person, I have the compassion and acceptance of their, I'll say, personality or their character traits. But at the same time, I'm going in, I know how they are. So I wrestle with sometimes, am I being judgmental beforehand?
And I wonder if they're having the same conversation about you.
Probably.
So this is the point of being open to moment. So yes, of course, we have, we have past experience with people that may influence present experiences with people. But if we can just stay open and not assume, or not even you know, it's sort of this idea of it is, you know, sometimes I think we can ask ourselves, is it everybody's job to entertain me, to interest me, to not bore me, to, you know, talk about things that I'm interested in, to, you know, that every conversation we have somehow has to, you know, benefit you in some way. Yeah, Paul.
Some that I don't like about being open to like every moment is like I have these meetings with this CEO of my company, and they just turn into these horrible rants, right? Where he's just like, you know, very toxic, you know, very like just terrible meetings. You know, you got, if anyone's been in the corporate world, you know these meetings. And like, I don't want to be open to that. I want to like shut down and like block that out. You know what I mean? As much as possible.
Well, yeah, you don't have to buy into it. You know, open, again, open only means you're open to where they are. You know, it's just sort of this, not assuming there's nothing of value in this moment. It doesn't mean that we can't, you know, because what can you do in a moment like that? What are other options? Instead of, you know, barricading yourself.
Sometimes I mute them because it's all E, or like I watch like esports and like try to just like ignore it.
Okay, so one thing is just distract yourself away from it. What's another possibility that might be more constructive? Anybody got some ideas? It's not up to Paul. Paul's expressed the problem. So
can you try to foster empathy?
You could foster empathy, or hear the suffering behind the rant.
Or send loving energy to that person.
Like you can, you know, yeah. I mean, it's like we can use that as a condition to practice in our minds, you know, may all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. You know, may you be free of suffering, because the ranting is what? It's, you know, it may be an ineffective response to their own frustration, justifiably or not. Certainly ineffectively if your staff can't even listen, you know, but it's just like, you know, so it's a matter of, you know, choosing whether you ever have a conversation with the boss to discuss, you know, why it's difficult for you to stay present in these meetings. But that may not be an opportunity for you, or you may not have the skill to be able to do that with, you know, without losing your job or something, you know. So but it is an opportunity to just practice some of the teachings and not run away. That doesn't mean we have to listen and try to make meaning of the rant, because it may be meaningless. Oh, Graziella, yes.
Well, I was thinking that the boss must think that it is meaningful. Mm-hmm. That there are some important message that he's trying to convey in some way that is very difficult to distill. And I'm wondering if trying to just focus or trying to pick on those things that might be useful, and just try to let go of the rest, because I don't know, maybe you can help them or help even the company by really identifying those things that are truly important that he thinks he is making clear to everybody, you know.
Yeah, I mean, so that it's, you know, so another possibility is to try to listen to the words without the, you know, the emotion around it, or the tone, or the sarcasm, I don't know, whatever, or the anger, you know. And if it, and you know, and it's possible there's something in there that you can grasp onto to use as information for how things could go forward in a way that would help, like, you know, would make you more effective in your job. So it's just, you know, it's about, you know, we don't have to like every moment. I mean, trying to find some, focusing on the positive doesn't mean every moment feels nice. It means being able to use every moment as an opportunity for your own path, you know. So it's just, and I can empathize with your experience, Paul. It's not easy to sit in angry rooms, period. You know, it's very challenging. You know? So when you're being paid to do it, it's, you know, it's sort of like, what a toss up, you know, do I want to get paid? Because you know, that we show up to the meeting, you know, but it's like, it is, you know, so it might be occasionally that you decide, I'll turn off this game and listen for a few minutes to the words, see if there's anything there that I can use, you know, and send out some loving kindness. And also the empathy, you can try to imagine what it's like to be in that, you know, to have that mind at that moment and how it can't be pleasant. And
Yeah.
at least have,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
That's occurred to me, because I've definitely been like a ranter myself, and it's a terrible, like, insanity, you know.
And sometimes even after the fact, you look back and you're kind of embarrassed for yourself, you know. And so it's, you know, there is that opportunity to connect with the humanity of the other person. You know, here's another unskillful human having a miserable moment. You know. But we really want to try not to value our time solely in terms of the event happening around us. We can make our moments valuable to us. The more we work with our minds, transform our responses to situations we don't like, the less they cause us trouble. Because it's the mind that's struggling, isn't it? Yeah, Bobby.
I've found myself in similar situations as Paul, where the person was narcissistic, toxic.
It doesn't matter what our conclusions about the person are.
Okay. And what I found was, with those challenges, I wanted them to change. I wanted them to be the way I wanted them to be. And I was banging heads with them. And when I was able to accept this is the way it is, and I stopped banging heads with them, my head didn't hurt anymore.
Yeah, because it's an inner battle that we're fighting. And that's where we're creating our own suffering.
Right. But I'm going to say maybe views might be the wrong word. My morals didn't change. I still thought what I thought. So I guess I accepted it, but I didn't agree with it. Yeah,
you can, yes. And then also we can take it that next step of looking at our judgments. Are they true? Do I know them to be a fact? Is it a temporary, this moment? Is it just a little sliver that I know of this person? Is it, is it justified labeling people? Is it help? So we can, we can really work on it with our minds in many levels, because when we label people, what do? What's one of the consequences of that?
I mean, we define them and we don't try and get to know them more. Or
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul, what were you going to say?
I was going to say the exact same thing.
So then we have closed the doors. They're in a box. So if we see them in other kinds of circumstances, we might not give them any space in our minds. So we want to recognize, you know, if we're trying to be, you know, accept our interconnectedness, our interdependence, you know, when we have space, we might want to be able, you know, we might want to recognize that our habit of coming to conclusions about people may not benefit us in the long run, because it closes us off to people that we've decided, you know, aren't worth our attention. You know, so it's like, you know, it's the same way, and also it builds expectations. And if we're really honest with our views of people, we'll see how fluid they are, because we can get mad at our best friends. You know, we can think they're total idiots, you know, in a moment. But because they help us in other times, and we like them in other times, we enjoy them in other times, you know, we don't get so stuck in that moment, unless it's a big moment, and then it can end the relationship. So, you know, it's a matter of choosing, you know, if we're going to be controlled by events, you know, be pulled around. Oh, this person's a jerk today. That's it, you know. So we don't, you know, if we keep it more fluid, again, because accepting doesn't mean that anything about the future, the next moment. Accepting is just trying to understand or recognize what's happening, you know, that this is what is. So you're in another meeting where someone's ranting, you know, and trying to go, okay, how, you know, I've tried this strategy and this strategy. What am I going to try today to work with my mind so I don't feel like this next 37 minutes are a waste of time? This is where you can write a list of why it's, you know, you can take, you know, look like you're working, you know, you're taking notes, thinking about why you want to work with your mind, why it's important to you, so you can have stronger and stronger motivations that are based on your reasoning of why you want to be able to be less judgmental, more patient, more compassionate, more empathetic, you know, be able to listen even if you disagree. Imagine how the world would be right now if we were able to listen if we disagree. You know? So it's a training, and it's not an easy training. So it's a matter of, you know, this is why one of the things that can really help is being aware of what arises in you and not trying to shove it aside, but to recognize, oh, I'm enraged right now, or I'm really afraid right now, because, you know, that is telling us something that we want to work with. You know, I mean, it's how people decide to, you know, be a social activist. You know, to speak out. Because they've been moved in some way. But coming from a place that recognizes the humanity in everyone involved in everything can really help us not just get to that brick wall of blame and, you know, just disbelief. Like, I can't believe you would think that way. Because we can't move from that spot. There's no movement available. And of course, the things on the personal level, you know, that just, you know, we have relationships with people that are ongoing. There's not just, very brief encounters. And so there, you know, our range of effort and energy we put into those moments, you know, we just, if we practice with it, the funny thing is, if we practice with those very brief, temporary, you know, not seemingly consequential moments in our life, that gives us the practice we might need when we're discussing it with our partner, some difficult, you know, situation, so that we're able to stay open, stay with the discomfort, be able to listen from the heart. Because we've practiced it with total strangers. So this is how we can make our moments valuable. Because each of our moments is our life. So if we want to make our lives meaningful, we have to be kind of present for it and grasp the opportunities that are there. And then we also need to replenish. We need to rest. We need to laugh. You know, we need to, you know, we're social beings.
Anytime I notice I'm in a situation where somebody's ranting, angry, I'm like, you know, if I took out the aspect of my personal comfort, all that's left is a person who's hurting, and it perpetuates my desire to practice because I am not yet skillful enough with wisdom and compassion. So it just perpetuates practice because I would like to have enough wisdom to be able to help that person. So if I take out my self-cherishing, all that's left is a hurting person.
Yeah. So that's a big piece that Beth is bringing up. You know, this, we get in our own way. You know, the Buddha said our self-grasping, the ignorance from which all of our disturbing states of mind arise. You know, and our self-centeredness, our self-cherishing that arises from that, it gets in the way of seeing skillful roads forward. And so it's so helpful when we set ourselves, you know, if I wasn't in this picture, this is the thing about perspective, of being able to step back. You know? And so it's this, and sometimes the perspective we need is on ourselves. You know, we need to be able to step back from ourselves and kind of see it, you know, from, you know, trying to look at it. If this was your best friend, you know, how would it look, you know, so that you can kind of maybe see yourself a little more clearly, but also not be so stuck in that moment from your own needs, you know, not take everything quite so personally. I mean, personally in the sense of just me or just mine, you know, where we can step back and remember how many beings there are. And our experience is one experience amongst many, and we share these experiences, don't we? You know, we can always have compassion and empathy for all the people sitting in those meetings with a ranter. you know. We can have, you know, compassion for ourselves, for our limitations, where we wish we had the skills to be able to respond to someone in the moment in an effective, helpful way. But being accepting when we do not. And making the aspiration to be able to develop these skills in the future. So we look inside and for discernment instead of focusing so much on discerning the other. You know, we try to look inward to what can we bring to the situation as opposed to what they're not bringing to the situation. So the next pillar of joy is forgiveness. So forgiveness does not mean we forget. We should remember the negative thing, but because there is a possibility to develop hatred, we mustn't allow ourselves to be led in that direction. We choose forgiveness. So I was reading a book yesterday by a woman named Valerie Carr. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. She's been doing work since 9/11 on hate crimes. She has a book called See No Stranger. And I really I'm enjoying the perspective. It's from a Sikh perspective, S-I-K-H. And she talks about how, let me read this if I can.
What's this, Sikh?
It's a religion, so you can look it up and read about it. So it's a particular, you know, so it's a fairly recent religion, but it's quite big in India, and of course, people who've immigrated here. The first death of someone, the first hate crime after 9/11 was someone who killed a Sikh in, you know, mistaking him for, not that it matters, for a Muslim, you know. So it's that's what sort of stirred her to, you know, to act. But she said she learned that, and I thought this was really interesting because this is like the different, you know, trying to make sure your anger at a situation doesn't become hatred, because hatred is the wish to harm and it's of no use whatsoever. So she said she learned that neurobiologists have studied how, what is it, how do you pronounce it? Somebody pronounce this for me.
Oxytocin.
Oxytocin, okay, is what arises, you know, it's in the body when we're like, you know, mothers and their babies. So it's associated with love. It's the feeling that, you know, it's the hormones, I guess, that get activated with the feeling of love. It also is triggered with aggression when mothers are protecting their babies. So I think that's quite fascinating. So it arises both with nurturing and with aggression when you're trying to protect your babies. I just find that fascinating. So one of the things that I think the Buddha's teachings convey is this idea that loving yourself is not a problem. Self-cherishing is not in itself a negativity. It's self-cherishing and self-grasping that are the problem. We need have self-care. We need to protect ourselves from harm. It's just the way in which we do these things. We want it to be founded on wisdom and not self-grasping. So this accepting of how, what arises in the mind when we're faced with difficult circumstances is part of that, self-compassion. Suffering has arisen and I wish to be free of it. As opposed to, suppressing. Suppressing really doesn't work, because what happens? It blows up in some unexpected time when when you can't suppress it anymore. You don't have the energy to suppress it. So a lot of teachers use the word digestion. We need to digest our anger. Which means we just need to work with it. We need to understand that coming from a place of anger can be destructive, but it doesn't mean somehow, the good news is the Buddha said you can work, transform your mind to the point where anger doesn't even arise. And the good news about that is we don't suffer at all from the experience of anger. But in the meantime, it's really this discernment that we don't want to feed our anger so that it becomes this wish to harm. Because then we're just perpetuating this suffering of samsara through retaliation, getting even, don't get mad, get even. And that's definitely a destructive direction. So learning how to use, the energy. This is what, in Tantra, using the energy of these strong states of like wrath and attachment and desire, are used not in their afflicted state, but just the energy that arises with those states of mind, to use it towards transforming our mind. Use it towards realizing emptiness of things. So it's understanding that, yes, the anger that arises may indicate an injustice, something that you might want to work towards changing. But it also may be a consequence of self-grasping. It may actually not have anything to do with some injustice. Being able to, once that has arisen and ceased, to reflect on what is true, to really investigate, you know, find the I in the situation. You know,
Tendron,
it's my self-interest here.
I have a
Yeah,
question.
Francesca, yes.
So like reactivity can be useful if it's in a productive way, so that you learn your mind.
Well, I
So-
wouldn't say reactivity is useful by itself. It's that next piece.
Because yeah, I was having this discussion with Anthony yesterday, and like I got like if I have a reactivity, and it prompts me to learn my mind, you know, to understand what I'm thinking, or you know what my feelings are about the situation, and you know if I just sit quietly and have and try to sort of suppress my mind from reacting or from having those thoughts of like, you know, what's going on here, why am I feeling my feelings, like I'm not identifying with my feelings, and sometimes I feel like I need to react so I can
When you
identify
say react, do you mean you have to do something?
I have to
say
almost
something?
say something, or
Yeah, well, that's dangerous, because you are responding from a state of mind that's out of control. So you can harm others when you do that.
Yes.
So it's really helpful. I mean, I'm never suggesting sitting quietly and suppressing the feeling.
Right.
You know, it's more of reflecting, you know, experiencing it without doing anything, because we want to be able to choose how we respond, as opposed to just react based on what's arisen in the mind.
Right. Sometimes I don't identify with my feelings until I react.
Well, yeah, sometimes that's the clue. Oh, I must have been angry. And we want to get better at it than that.
Yeah.
Because that's how we harm others and ourselves, by acting from a place that is out of control. So the more we can, I mean, but we start with after the fact. Oh.
Right.
But then we want to start to notice, I wonder, you know, what was happening in the moment before I reacted. So we can start to see how we feel it in the body or our thoughts, so that we can not do anything from that place.
Right. Yeah, because I was thinking that, you know, having the reaction, which I have had in recent days, and it helped me understand my feelings, and then I apologize. Then I apologize, and
but that's we want to get ahead of that.
I know.
Yeah, so don't keep holding on to this idea that, oh, I must react in order to know. No, that's not true.
It's hard. I know.
It is hard.
Very.
You know, this is why, but part of that is we want to release that energy when we don't like it, you know? And so we're giving it to someone else. Here, take my pain, in our reaction, instead of tolerating the discomfort and not doing anything. You know, we want to not give the gift of our suffering. It's like this, and this is a practice. It's not just a moment. It's not like, oh, I get that, and then you do it. No. It takes time. But it also takes, you have to convince yourself it's a good habit to develop. So this is why writing down why you would like this to change, why apologizing is not as satisfactory as not doing it in the first place. You know, we need to come, and that's not, it's not just, oh, because then it's embarrassing, or, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's really just saying, because I don't want to do harm. We want to find the reasons why we don't want to do harm and write them down. And those reasons have to do with us. You know, it's like, you know, sometimes you have to ask,
So
Do I
like
want to
once,
stay married or do I want to be right? Yeah.
once you recognize it was coming from a jealousy or coming from, you know, an unskillful thought, you know, but at first when you react, you don't even know where it's coming from until
Yeah,
you,
but you just have to let it play out in your mind. You have to sit with that discomfort. Oh, I'm miserable right now. And let that wisdom bubble up. Oh, I'm jealous. And this comes from asking yourself the questions. Ooh, what's going on with me? Clearly, this has touched a button. What is it? And you kind of play the thing out in your mind to try to find it.
yeah.
So sometimes it's reputation. Oh, I don't want them to think that I think that. Who knows? I mean, we come up with unbelievable stories, don't we? So but we need to be able to, or choose to sit with that uncomfortable energy without acting. Otherwise, we're asking others to be our sounding board for our misery, so that we can figure out. I used to be like, good grief, it's sort of like, I'm so wounded that you're just going to have to put up with it until I figure it out. Well, that's kind of abusive. Because just like you would not say to a person who hits a child that, oh, I see that you didn't know you were angry. No, I'm sorry. You have to not hit the child. You have to tolerate that energy in you and walk away or do whatever you need to do, because your acting out is not acceptable.
Yeah. And what about forgiving yourself for having those
also, yeah. So
for having those thoughts?
We can have a personal conversation here, Francesca, or we can get back to the whole thing. So yes, and that's that part of acceptance, because we screw it up again and again and again. We have habits. We have unskillful habits. We have limitations, but it doesn't mean we can't change them. But it does mean we have to work at it. So we have to accept where we are, have compassion for ourselves where we are. We have to, this is the whole point of purification. We have to acknowledge the harm that we do, then, really try to have that determination to not do it again, or do better next time. And we have to figure out ways to, be able to tolerate that energy instead of giving it to someone else. And so we need some reasons to do that. So when that energy arises, we can walk out the door and just think of the reasons why we don't want to just react. You want to let whatever that let that energy tell you what's going on, instead of using someone else as a way of finding out. And we don't have to hate ourselves for doing that. We don't have, it's just, this is, we're all in the same boat. We all want to be happy. We all want to be free of suffering, and we don't know what we're doing. But if we make this strong determination to try to do no harm and recognize the actions and the words and the way we think that in fact do harm, that's a place to start. Recognizing our tender spots, that when they're pushed, we do things that we regret. So we want to get so familiar with those tender spots that as soon as they've been barely breathed upon, we start to take care of that wound so we don't have to act out. And that comes from self-care, self-love, self-compassion. And again, it's like, just like, you know, when we forgive others, it's not about forgetting. It's understanding the humanity in each other and the mistakes we make and our limitations. We need to do that for ourselves. Doesn't mean we forget or try to ignore our bad habits. It just means oh, okay, this is where I am. But unlike others, we can't control others, but we can work on ourselves. That's something we do have that's under our power. But we need to develop new skills.
Peggy has a question.
Yes.
Oh, actually, it wasn't a question. It was just a thought. A couple of years ago, before Christmas or Thanksgiving, you were helping us to learn how to handle people that might be difficult. And it was that you have that feeling that comes up. You've got that, you can tell, you get it in your head, your stomach, your neck, and it's about that pause before, or that pause, and to just listen to your body and stop. And that resonated with me, and it's helped me so much, especially during these circumstances when people tend to get on each other's nerves. It's just like, take a
Too
pause.
much togetherness.
Yeah. Take a pause, take a breath. And it just, that related in my mind what Francesca was talking about.
Yeah, and it's really, and we have to get familiar with these spots. We may not recognize them right now, but the more we start observing instead of acting, that's that pause of stepping back, tolerating that uncomfortable or miserable experience we're having, that energy that's arisen, and try to, first of all, you want to notice where it is in your body, because that's going to help you the next time it arises. Oh, I've got that catch. And sometimes it's mental. You maybe not feel it in the body, but you say something in your mind that's really nasty. There's just your first thought is mean or sarcastic, and that's it's like, oh, I'm not happy. One of those tender spots has been touched. And instead of just saying, oh, well, I must be right because I've been hurt, what we need to do is take care of whatever has been wounded so that we do not, retaliate. Because often it isn't the external anything. Those are conditions, but we just remembered something about some past hurt. Or we're afraid of being hurt in the same way. Even though we haven't been hurt yet, we feel like, oh, the conditions are getting close.
Right.
Danger, danger. So we need to take care. And sometimes with certain things, we are so out of control. In other words, our habit is so in control, that we literally have to just say, I'm sorry, I need to take a break. I've lost it, and just not continue whatever's conversation, whatever, because that you're not in control of your speech and behavior. So because you're not in control of your mind. So you need to just take a break, and we try to establish these things with our friends and our partners so that, and our kids, so we can have that space so that we can model it for others as well. That it's okay to sometimes say, I cannot be trusted in this moment. I need to back up. Yeah. So it's very freeing to not demand of yourself to be able to always respond in a loving, kind way. You know, and say, I just need a pause because I'm not feeling particularly loving. And you don't have to say anything, because in all likelihood, whatever you say is going to be tainted with that energy that you're trying to release. Yes, Bobby.
How does do no harm play into self-preservation, more specifically self-defense?
Well, I mean, basically it says, as long as we grasp at the self, thinking that we exist in a particular way that is permanent, concrete, that, you know, from birth to death, you know, there's me that needs to be protected, then of course, you know, self-defense makes sense. And as His Holiness says, if somebody's coming at you, you know, it's perfectly reasonable to run away. So, but the idea that you value your life more than you value someone else's, to the point that you could kill them, is something we want to work towards, you know, not acting from that place.
With that, I wonder if, well, I wonder, and maybe you know, does the His Holiness bodyguards or security forces carry guns?
Yes, they do. And he prays for them.
Thank you.
Yeah. His Holiness said he personally, of course, he doesn't choose to have bodyguards. It's something that his country demands, out of love and compassion and concern, because he certainly gets a lot of death threats. But His Holiness himself says that he really thinks that the only circumstances that he could imagine killing someone else is if he was the last person who could teach the Dharma on the earth. And then he would do it to protect, you know, the Dharma. So, you know, but he's not even sure he would do it then, because the Dharma is also impermanent. Oh.
Wait, how? Isn't it like books and like what if like books went away and like...
Books have been burned. Books are banned. There are no Dalai Lama books allowed to be sold in China. His name is blocked on the internet. Things are impermanent. You know, even electronic data disappears. So it's a matter of understanding that this isn't it. Our consciousness never ceases. So we want to, you know, use this precious opportunity where we have a great human rebirth, where we have the ability to try to, you know, work with our minds, where we have the opportunity to study teachings, you know, and continue and reflect, all these things that we can do because we have a terrific physical support for our mind. We want to use them well in order to create the cause to have similar conditions in the future, so we can keep this process going till we are liberated from samsara, because we've developed our mind to the point where we actually recognize how things exist, not how they appear to exist to us. And then that self-grasping and self-cherishing, anger, aversion, all the negative states of mind that are all really about that. The reason they're negative is because they're all about me and mine, don't arise at all. Because now you have a direct perception of the absence of me and mine and you and others and them, and all this dualistic way of experiencing existence.
So does that mean there's no such thing as evil in the Buddha's perspective?
There's only afflicted ego.
So no evil.
Oh, evil. No, not truly evil. Because it's like there are things that will create the cause for suffering in the future. And we call them evil, non-virtue, you know, all of those things, because they're gonna do nothing but send you to the hell realms and then practice these terrible habits of mind that, you know, think it's okay to kill everybody you don't like, you know, all of those things. But it's that being able to step back, really far back, and seeing the big picture of how this is just, you know, nothing. You know, but what matters is the habits we're leaving on our mind stream. Because we'll take a different body and we'll keep acting out. So we need to, you know, but, you know, if we keep working with our mind, eventually we will no longer respond with this, you know, afflicted, ego-driven, self-cherishing, self-centered driven habit. And we'll remove the obstacles to realizing how things exist. I mean, it's a big picture view. It's, you know, I mean, it's really looking at the whole teachings, not just slivers of them. So it's a matter of, you know, trying to work with the mind. I mean, all I can do is, I have no idea about, you know, future lives. I don't have any realizations. I haven't developed calm abiding so that I can actually remember past lives, you know, but I do know that I'm a kinder, nicer, wiser person since studying the Dharma. I see the benefit of working with my mind. I no longer excuse myself for my bad habits in the sense of, oh, I can't do anything about it. It's just the way I was born, you know. You know, I accept that, okay, this is where my starting point and I can change. And I have changed. And I sleep better at night and I have less regret. Doesn't mean I don't continue with mistakes. But I have this idea that, oh, if I've been able to make this progress, there's, you know, I can make some more progress, and then I can make some more progress. And the Buddha just says, guess what? You can get all the way to enlightenment and omniscience. I'm just not, you know, it's bigger than I can, you know, I just, you know, I can't imagine what that looks like because I'm not close to that. So, but it's this, but, you know, as far as understanding the teachings, that's the view I have to take. I have to step back and go, okay, that's right. Our consciousness doesn't end at the time of death, you know? So how we've been practicing, the habits we develop in this life continue. So I want to be careful about what I practice, what I get better at, what I'm stronger at, because everything gets easier with practice. You know? Which is why there's so many states of mind that just seem to automatically arise. It's just because we're very practiced at them. Self-preservation is one of them. But yet we can set it aside, can't we, when we choose to risk our lives for others. People who rescue people, soldiers, you know, there are all sorts of, you know, examples of our ability to even set that aside when we're focused on others. You know. Okay. We all fried now? Anyway. So, where's our fearless leader? Is anybody here who's a fearless? Oh, there's Nicole. Nicole, can you just break us up into little groups just to say hello before we say our dedications, just to remind each other that we really, we're not just these 2-inch squares. We can be 4-inch squares. Just for, 3 minutes.
Okay.